Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 22 of Shankism, LMA, England, and France. But today, this is part 2, so we're talking about France. So, France is a nation state. Alright, as you see, the current boundaries right there. You see in the north, you see Normandy, which it's still called today, up near the English Channel and by the United Kingdom. But this is where we're talking about today. So, as we talked about with England, England actually controlled about half of modern day France. When France gets its start early on with Hugh Capet, which I'll mention in a minute, you see in blue there, Paris is the main area of what Hugh Capet will own. The dotted line is what Paris has today. This is Paris in its ancient map form. All right, we have Hugh Capet. You want to write him down from 941 to 996 AD. He's the first gentleman we will be talking about. Hugh can pay for my drink. It's a way of remembering it. So Hugh Capet is a part of this Capetian dynasty. But after Charlemagne, France is ruled by dukes and counts. 987, the last Carolingian king dies. So all of from Charles Martel to Louis the Slugger, the guy that dies here, ends the line. There's no one else to take the place. And this is not to be confused with a Louisville Slugger, the bat that is. A French duke, which would be Hugh Capet, takes over. He's actually elected in. They think they can control him, these other, dukes and lords and so forth, but he's actually a lot stronger than people gave him credit. A lot stronger. He's based out of Paris, and Paris becomes a major trading city, and because of that, he gets lots of wealth and gains amazing prestige and starts to slowly grow France, slowly grow from the center here in Paris. And remember, Paris was a Roman city. So obviously in blue, that's what you want to write down, that Hugh Capet starts the Capetian dynasty, and he includes Paris. Which I just said there. That Capetian dynasty will last from 987 to 1328. You're looking at about 350 years. The next guy that's relevant of talking about, okay, obviously time goes on, 200 or so years, and we have Philip II, or Philip Augustus. Yes, he's taking Augustus because, again, they're looking back to Rome and be like, hey, that was a better time. We need to be more like the Romans, try to get back to that glory days. And so he's known as Philip II or Philip Augustus, not to be confused with Philip II of Greece, because they're in completely different time frames, and you're looking at about, a 1,500 year difference. Things that you want to write down with Philip II, also known as Philip Augustus, exalted one, first citizen, all that good stuff. It increased the territory of France is the big one. You'll see here in a moment. He'll gain back Normandy, because remember the English owned Normandy. He'll set up a centralized government, establish bailiffs to preside over courts, and collect taxes. So all of this, he is making Paris run efficiently. And he'll be another character we talk about, an important figure we talk about when we go to the Crusades, but that's a whole other episode, because I talk about several of the Crusades. That'll be next week or the week after. So this is what I was talking about, of increased territory of France. So why we know modern day France is because of Philip II, Philip Augustus. So up there in the left-hand image, green is what you see that England owned, and the pink is what France owned. Not a whole lot. When Philip II comes into play of France, after he's all said and done, he gains most of France back. what we know as modern day France. The next guy is Louis IX, also known as Louis the Pious. He is the grandson of Philip II. He'll be around from 1226 to 1270, so about 800 years ago in a country that's just now forming at this point in history. The big thing here is he sets up the royal courts. He sets up a court system, right? Where you're not just being charged by the king, you're actually, there's this whole court system set up. Philip IV of France will get into an argument with Pope Boniface, not Boniface, Boniface. So he essentially, I am king of France, pay me taxes. He wants more money, and he wants to get the church. He wants to tax the church. People are like, you're crazy, Philip the Fourth. They don't call him Philip IV. They call him Philip the Fourth, or maybe just Philip, depending on how well you know him. Or Phil, you never know. So Philip the Fourth has an argument with Pope Boniface, and in order to kind of resolve this and to gather more people on his side, he establishes what's known as the Estates General. The Estates General. Now, what this compares to, as you can kind of see, very close to Congress, it's a tri-cameral system. So again, you're writing the Estates General that Philip IV establishes this. The first estate was already kind of there, and these are church leaders, right? They're the ones that are involved in this. So remember, think of a tricameral system, a three-house system like you would in Congress. We have a bicameral system with the House and Senate in our Congress. They're going to have a tricameral system. The second estate is the great lords. So the lords, specifically the lords, have their own kind of body that they represent them in the Estates General. The third one, and obviously all these you're writing down, is the commoners. So Philip IV adds the commoners to this. That way, he has lots and lots of people on his side, because the majority of the population, right there, they are the commoners. Still wants people to pay him taxes. And what he's known for is adding the third estate, establishing more power to the people. And this is huge, right? Governing bodies later on will look to this. So, just to give a little background, again, Pope Boniface, not to be confused with Boniface, Boniface issued a papal bull stating that all people were subject to the Pope's authority. All people that were Roman Catholic. Philip proves Boniface wrong by putting him in jail. So he's basically like, yeah, I don't care what you say, Pope Boniface. I'm going to just throw you in jail. I have the military backing me. Whatever. So Boniface loses all credibility and power, because everyone's like, oh, you can't do that to the Pope. No. And Philip IV is like, I'll do what I want. I'm throwing you in jail. Nothing you can do about it. You're going to Pope jail. So this kind of marks the beginning of the decline of the papacy, meaning the Pope's office, Pope's authority. So Philip IV convinces the College of Cardinals to appoint a French bishop as Pope in 1305, Clement V. And what you want to write down is what it's kind of hard to see there, it's in red. He'll move the papacy, meaning the Pope's office, from Rome, remember, in Vatican City, where the Pope had been for 1,300 years, to Avignon, France. So southern France, as you figured out from your maps. In 1378, Pope Gregory XI dies while in Rome. Italian cardinals appoint, because Boniface is out at this point, obviously. Pope Gregory XI dies while in Rome. Italian cardinals appoint an Italian as Pope. And the French cardinals in Avignon will appoint a French Pope. So you have two popes, dueling popes. This is sometimes referred to as the Second Great Schism, because remember, in 1054, the First Great Schism happened, where the church split up. Christianity split. You have, in the West, you have Roman Catholics. In the East, you have Byzantine Orthodox, or Eastern Orthodox. This is known as the second. So right in purple or pink, forced all popes to resign, and in 1417 they elected Martin V as the new pope. So they have these dueling popes. Where's the papacy at? Is it in Avignon? Is it in Rome? Da da da, back and forth, back and forth. And the way to solve this, they elected another pope. They just basically said, you know what? Both popes, throw them out. We're going to elect a new pope, Martin V. But this is like, at this point, people are looking at the papacy and the clergy and like, you guys get your stuff together. This is ridiculous. So they lose even more power over secular rulers, meaning kings. Charles VII and power in France. So Charles VII comes to the throne thanks to Joan of Arc. Now, you can see the time frame here, 1403 to 1461. So we're kind of going through a lot here, past the High Middle Ages into the Late Middle Ages. I'll talk more about Joan of Arc later on, but I'm just kind of introducing Charles now. Really, the only reason he gets to the throne is because of Joan of Arc. We'll talk about her. He'll betray her after her capture, hold a trial, found guilty, Joan of Arc, of heresy, and she's burned at the stake. We'll talk about her more. But you do also want to put down that he creates the first professional army, like a standing army for the French that they consistently have, doesn't matter what season, doesn't matter what year, there's always a standing army ready to go. That's Charles VII of France. So main things to know from France, right? You have Philip II, strong government. You have Louis IX, also known as Louis the Pious. He is a part of the French appeals court. France also has the founder, kind of, in a way, Hugh Capet of the Capetian dynasty. It starts a 350-year period. The Second Great Schism with Philip IV, and a States General called to gain support against the Pope. This is where that came into play, like I said about earlier, and resolved by the Council of Constance. Alrighty, this has been episode 22, part 2 of Shankism, France, c'est la vie.
Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Cheatham, the French teacher, and I've been given the task of listing some of the top 5 things that I love about France. So, on y va. Number 1, the first thing that I love about France, stereotypically, and its culture, would be their dedication to the culinary arts in every aspect, from the growing process to the cooking process, the serving process, the eating process. They take pride in every part of that, making high quality foods, especially at the regional level. And they take time to appreciate meals together. Everything in France revolves around meal times. Lunch is from 12 to 2. Pretty much everything shuts down and people will go out or go home to eat, and dinners are often eaten with family and friends and can last for hours, and they just enjoy time together, talking, really being together, and of course eating the most delicious food that you'll ever see or taste. So in France, food is really a lifestyle as opposed to a necessity. They have, 400 kinds of cheese and you name it. So if you're a food lover, France is for you. I know it is for me. So the second thing I love about France is probably just the history. Which sounds cliche because obviously you're listening to this in history class. But when you go to places that have been inhabited for centuries and sometimes millennia, you're literally walking through history and you can physically see how the passage of time in the architecture, the art, the monuments, and everything around you has really like affected the people who live there and have lived there. And it's just really interesting. It'll just suck you right in. You could be walking by a fountain that was built by the Romans. You could drive by a castle that was built in the 1100s. You could, visit a town that was affected by World War II, and it's exactly preserved how it was when it was attacked. There's just endless amounts of places that just really show you the history there. That's really, really cool. The third thing I would say would be the pride that French people have in preserving their language and their culture. They have this really unique sense of identity that, they're really interested in preserving from, their motto, liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, and fraternity, to just the Académie Française, whose job it is to actually, police the language and make sure French stays the way it is, which is kind of unique in the world. And to a lot of us, we sometimes think of that as being arrogant or being rude, but I think that their love for their country is a really admirable thing, but also really realistic because they're also able to see the flaws. But if you do go to France, an important thing to know would be to have a few key phrases in French in your pocket so that you can show them that you care a little bit about speaking their language, and they obviously will very much appreciate that, and that goes a long way. They like the effort. The next thing would probably be how creative, thoughtful, and innovative the French people are. So if you think about art and literature, philosophy, science, they've contributed significantly in all of those fields. So if you think about some inventions like the Braille system, the pencil sharpener, pasteurization, the hairdryer, the metric system, canned food, if you like photography and film, all of those things were invented by the French. So if the next time you put mayonnaise on your sandwich, or you pop some aspirin because you have a headache, maybe just take a second and thank the French, because they have been involved in shaping kind of how modern society lives. So it's kind of great. Probably the last thing, also really cliche, as a tourist, you're not really going to find a much better place to go than France. One of the best things about France and Europe in general is just how easy it is to get around by bus or metro or train. And in Paris alone, you have anything that you can desire to go see. They have the largest art museum in the world, the Louvre, which takes days to walk through. The Eiffel Tower, obviously, that you can go up and eat in. The catacombs of Paris that a lot of people find fascinating, with millions of bones of French people buried in tunnels under the city. You have gorgeous cathedrals like Notre Dame and Sacré-Cœur that have amazing architecture and stained glass windows. You have Disneyland Paris, if you're a Disney fan. Sporting events like the Tour de France or the French Open, the tennis tournament. So no matter who you are, France has something that you're bound to enjoy. So I hope that everyone has a chance to visit France or learn more about it, because the more you know, the more you fall in love with it. So thanks for listening. À la prochaine.